Now, a rut is a groove that's worn into a place, usually the ground, by repeated action over and over again. And the most common rut that we think of is the rut that's caused by wheels on a dirt road, where the wheels tend to roll in the same place on the road over and over again, wear down the soil and create furrows, create channels. And the deeper these ruts get, the easier it is for vehicles to fall into them and therefore make them deeper and deeper. And once in them, it's harder to get the vehicle out of them, and it forces the vehicle to go in exactly the same direction as has been gone every time before. But it's also used as a metaphor, of course, to describe what it's like to do the same thing over and over and over again in the same way, and to fall into, unintentionally, a very rigid pattern, often without us being aware that we've fallen into this rut. We've got so locked into doing it this way that we find it very hard to break out of our rut. So if my drawing's in a rut, if I'm doing things the same way over and over again, and I find it very hard to make a change, then how can I change my process? How can I change the way I think? How can I change what I do to possibly discover a more productive, more enjoyable, and more varied way of getting to where I want to go in my drawing? Because the whole idea of getting out of a rut presupposes that I'm not completely happy with what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and where I'm getting through doing it this way. So here are 6 ways we can break out of a drawing rut. First thing I need to do is work out, well, what am I unhappy about with this rut? Is it the way I feel when I draw? Is it the sorts of drawings I do? Is it the way I do them? Because the more specific we can be in our thinking about why we're not happy with something about our art process, our art journey right now, then the easier it's going to be to break out of the rut, to break out of my routine, because I've got something quite specific to try and do. Do I think my drawings look childish? Do I think they look cartoonish? Do I think they just look boring? Do I think they look inaccurate? The more specific I am in understanding my problem with my work, with what I produce, the easier it will be to find the right decisions to help me get out of this rut. I need to work out in as much detail as I can, why is this rut not serving me right now in my drawing journey? And the better I do this first point, the easier it's going to be to do this second point. And that's to get inspiration, particularly if I find the first point hard to do, to pin down exactly what I'm not happy about in my drawings. And by getting inspiration, I mean look at the drawings of other artists who preferably draw similar subjects in a way that I would like to draw myself. Find their works and have a look at them. And not just have a look at them and say, oh, they're much better than I'll ever be, but look at them and work out, why are their drawings so good? What is it that appeals to me to make me want to firstly even look at their drawings, but secondly, how do they create the effects? How do they create the end result? What sort of marks do they make? How do they combine them together? What sorts of values do they use? How do they do their hatching? How do they draw tree canopies? How do they draw the tiles on the roof? How do they draw the ground? Whatever it is that really appeals to me in their work is probably an indication of something that in some way I know I need to work on. It's something I know that I struggle with, because I'm going to be drawn to those things in the work of other people. And in the marks that they use, I can start to see possible solutions for the issues that I'm just doing over and over again, unsatisfactorily, unhappily, and am trying to break out of. Seeing the path that someone ahead of me has taken out of the rut that I'm in is a great way to help break out of the rut myself. It's one thing to see the problems that I have in my work. It's another thing to work out, especially from a technique point of view, how to move into a more positive, more productive direction. And particularly if I'm self-taught, I don't have a teacher to give me specific guidance. I need to find that guidance myself and looking at the work of artists whose work I would aspire to, particularly in the way it's drawn and the sorts of subjects that are drawn in it, is a great way to do that and to find those answers easily. My third way to break out of a drawing rut really does depend on us having done the first 2 points, because that's to visualize how I want my drawing to look at the end. And I don't mean just have generalized, oh, I hope to do it better, I hope to do it well, I hope to make a good copy. Actually try and see in our mind how the drawing would look, what marks I'm going to use, what the lights and darks will be, what the angles will be, what the composition would be, what the focal point, what the attention grabbing part or the impact of the drawing will be. And the more specifically I can visualize my finished drawing, the more information and tools I give myself to get there at the end. This tells me what to do when I'm holding the pen. It guides me in the sorts of marks I'm going to use. And it gives me a chance now to put into practice all the techniques, all the stylistic things I've seen other artists do when I've looked for inspiration. It lets me now try and use the marks that I've particularly studied in the works of other artists to create certain effects. And now I can start to try and similarly use marks in similar ways for similar effects. Now, I'm not copying their work. I'm integrating their processes into my processes. But I can do it so much better if I've got a picture in my head of how I hope these marks, these techniques are going to look in the drawing I'm doing right now. My fourth point is something that we should all be doing anyway. It's something I do before every drawing. But that's to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes experimenting with mark making. And this is also something that we can really only do properly when we've done the third point, when we visualized how we want our finished drawing to look. Now I work out what sort of marks do I need to use to create that finished drawing that I saw. This becomes even more important if we're using different marks in a different way to create a different effect to what we've traditionally used in the past. For a 30 to 60 minute drawing, it might be 5 or 6 minutes worth of experimentation. We're not doing it to warm up, but it does actually serve that purpose as well. It gets our mind engaging with our reference and with process and with translating the reference into marks onto the paper. It gets our observation going, carefully observing our reference. It gets our eye-hand coordination worked up. But most importantly, it lets me see if the marks I'm planning on using are going to have the effect I want. And it lets me also work out things like the direction of my hatching lines and how much hatching I need to do to create the value I want to create. It lets me work out, is this pen the best pen to use? And it's not just that this warms up my process, lets me check the techniques I'm going to use. It also gives me confidence. It also lets me feel, yep, this is good, this is going to work. And again, we're often in a rut because lack of confidence has us doing the same things over and over again. So experimenting beforehand, finding ways that are going to work, can encourage us and give us the confidence to actually now put these marks into practice in our drawing. The fifth way to break out of a rut is really quite related to the third way, where we visualize beforehand what we're going to do. And that's that we now look at what we've done and work out, well, does it match up with what I visualized? Is it better? Is it not as effective as I'd planned? Because this is going to give us the really specific focus we need for our next drawing. This tells me, well, this sort of worked, but I should have done it more this way for the effect I was trying to create. Well, now I have that information for the next drawing. Or I might think, it just hasn't worked at all. So I'll go and look back at that artist's work and just have a look at their marks compared to these marks and try and work out more specifically where my mark making went wrong. It's also, are my perspective angles correct? Are my proportions correct? The height to width ratio, does it look the same in my drawing? Are my values interesting? Is the composition strong? These are things I need to be considering too when I think about how will I make my next drawing more the sort of drawing that I'm wanting to do, because it is this very specific focus which will help me build the momentum of moving forward in new ways, in different directions, that will get me out of the rut into a more comfortable, more productive path that's going to actually take me to the destination I want to be with my drawing. It's going to probably, for most of us, be hard to get out of that rut for the very reason that we're in it in the first place. So the more specifically I can focus on things I'm aiming for in my drawings by visualizing the drawing beforehand and then by critiquing it afterwards, the easier it will become for me to move in that direction. This sixth point is I need to change things that I'm doing. I need to change things in the big picture process of how I organize my drawing sessions. It's not just the detail, the line works, the marks, the values, but we fall into a rut in all sorts of other ways as well. Here are some quick suggestions of ways we can change our drawing process to help us get out of a rut. The first is, if I usually draw from photos, why not try drawing from life? That's a really big shake-up. And it's not designed to get me better drawings. It's designed to have me get used to being out of my comfort zone and having to do things differently. If my drawings tend to take a long time, then set myself a 30 minutes and no more time for drawing. Let how I draw be driven partly by how much time is available. This is a good way of forcing ourselves to do things differently, because some of the ruts we're in are because we give ourselves unlimited time to go through all these unhelpful processes that we go through. Making ourselves work faster can make a lot of unhelpful things just not possible to do, and can also open us up to things such as more spontaneity and freshness in our line work, which can actually improve how our drawings look. The next one, a commitment to finish every drawing. And again, if I have a habit of leaving lots of drawings half finished, then this is a really important change to make. When I leave things half finished, it's often an indication that I'm not happy with how it's going. I feel like I've wasted my time. So we don't let ourselves collect a big pile of half finished drawings. We say, I'm going to finish every drawing, even if it's not been turning out. As I keep processing it, I'll do my best to make it turn out as best as I can, given what I've already done. And in that process, I will learn all these really important things about how we overcome things that aren't quite right that we've already drawn, even if we can't erase them. Another really important thing is to disconnect my drawing from feeling like drawing. To set a time where I say, every week, this is my minimum. Every week on Saturday at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., I'm going to do a half-hour drawing. I'm going to make sure that my reference is found during the week, so it's there, ready. I'm going to make sure that my pencil, my paper, my ink, whatever I need, the lighting is set up before I start. I need to make sure I make the most of my drawing time by doing all those other things beforehand. And it's not just saving time, but it's removing those distractions, those opportunities to actually get involved in something else, or simply use up so much time that I think it's not worth drawing. I need to give myself no excuse to not start straight away. I should try drawing smaller or larger if I want to change my drawing process. How we draw is surprisingly linked to what scale, how large our drawing is. And so some of the habits that we're trying to break out of, we've partly developed because of the size of the drawing we're doing. Go smaller, go larger. Don't go too large, because larger drawings generally are more difficult to do well. But certainly change the size noticeably that I'm working on if I, again, want to push myself to find, to develop, to do different drawing processes. Now, this one can be fun, and that's to try and very specifically draw in the style of one of the artists whose works inspired me, to really choose something that they would draw and seek to find their marks in my own way, I guess, but create something that looks a bit like they've drawn it. As well as changing the size, we can change what we're drawing with. So if I usually draw in pencil, why not bite the bullet and switch to ink with its fear of getting marks and lines in the wrong place? Remember, we shouldn't be focused on producing artworks. We should be focused on producing drawings that are leading us to improve, to develop our drawing technique, our style, our competence, our ability, and our confidence. I don't know how many of you in school had teachers try and impress the importance of planning an essay before we wrote it, of just doing some bullet points of the directions we wanted our essay to go and the conclusion, the end result we wanted it to have shown. It's no different in drawing. Spending 5-10 minutes, not just making marks, but planning our drawing overall can be really helpful. One way to shake things up, and this will put the wind up a lot of you, is to commit to not using an eraser, even if we draw in pencil. Often, erasers end up being a way of massaging our fear that we're going to mess things up and that we're going to prove ourselves incompetent or people will laugh at our drawing. And it can drive us into perfectionism more and more, that every line that's not perfect, we feel we need to erase it and try and make it more perfect. And that's not really what drawing's about. It's not about perfect lines. It's about creating a visual effect. And if I'm so focused on the minuscule direction of every line, then my overall line work is going to suffer. Even if it becomes slightly more accurate, my drawing will end up lots of tight, tense, little accurately placed lines and marks, rather than have a coherence and overall rhythm of being put on the paper and then combining together to create a certain visual effect. That's what I'm after. And why not have a drawing session for, say, 30 minutes weekly of a non-drawing drawing session where I'm not going to pick up a pen or a pencil, where I'm really researching, really digging deeper in an area that I need to go, and whether it's still just exploring further for inspiration, seeing what marks have other people used for foliage or for the ground or clouds, whatever. Or it might be I start researching perspective more, that I've realized from my critiquing my drawings that I need to understand how it operates more if I'm going to capture the visual impact of perspective more accurately in my drawing. Or I might need to explore hatching and really work out, do I know everything I need to know about hatching and its possibilities? So I guess we're talking about a research period. And again, if I'm continually visualizing and then creating my drawings and getting inspiration from outside of what I would naturally do, this is all giving me direction for my research. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. If you feel like you're in a drawing rut, I hope some of these things will help lift you out of it and put you perhaps on a more comfortable path, a more enjoyable path, but more importantly, a path that's going to get you to where you want to end up in the way your drawings look. But in the end, wherever you're at now, wherever you hope to be, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.